You know, as soon as you monetize something, now it's monetized criminal activity. So just understand that, yes, it's out there. So have your business continuity plan in place. What do you do when this happens? Because people are in a situation now where once they get hit with ransomware, what do? Do we pay the criminals for the ransom? Well, I don't recommend you doing business with criminals. They're criminals, you know. But sometimes what if you're a hospital, a healthcare organization, and you're trying to get your medical equipment back on board. You might have no choice but to do something with that. But understand that if bad guys got into your network to cause this ransom, to encrypt your system, then even though you restore the system, there's still a means to get in there. And now you just proved you're a paying customer.
So we'll start with introductions. John Hoover, if you could just take a minute to talk about yourself and your company.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me, right? I don't need the mic?
Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Well, thanks for coming to the session, first of all. So I'm John Hoover with Kiancis. We're a globally headquartered company out of Carmel, Indiana. So just north of here, if you don't know where Carmel is. A lot of our local clients here that we work at, primarily doing SAP consulting, end-to-end SAP ERP, S4, and then also Salesforce and Microsoft as well, because those kind of go hand in hand now with a lot of SAP implementations. So we're obviously heavy here in the state of Indiana, but we do have offices in the Philippines, India, some other offices in Bangalore, some large offices actually. And we got about 1,000 or so consultants, employees, and independents working for us right now. So that's a little bit about the company. And again, I'm John Hoover, PMP, 22 years of deploying SAP. I was a lot younger when I started, didn't have as much gray hair, and also dealing with a lot of security issues and concerns along the way globally around the world. And that's enough about me.
Thanks, John. There we go. Jason, how about you?
My name is Jason Dell, Security Practice Manager with Network Solutions. Our headquarters is in Granger, Indiana, which is near South Bend. We have offices up in Granger and in Indianapolis and in Fort Wayne and Chicago, and most of our customers are in those areas. We focus on enterprise networking, collaboration, data center, and security. So far as a security practice, our goal is to partner with our customers to educate and empower them to make good decisions so far as their security strategy. So to make sure that they are able to securely access their applications on site or remote, and that their data at rest or in transit is safe and secure.
All right, Brian.
Hey, good morning. My name is Ryan Gould. I'm with a company called KSM Consulting. We're actually headquartered right downtown. We do have a north side office as well. Our consulting practice generally focuses in 3 different areas. Implementing and managing kind of meaningful technology, building purposeful organizational strategies, and building intelligent data sets that organizations can use to make great decisions. We're pretty agnostic. We're not vertical specific. We're more like really deep, curious problem solvers. So people come to us with a problem, they don't know who to talk to. We're kind of like Ghostbusters, right? We just kind of figure it out. So, I've been doing technology for about, 16, 17 years at this point, since the Air Force days, and I've seen kind of every part of the technology stack. I started in development, I got into security, got into networking, got into infrastructure, now it's cloud and DevOps, so kind of touched a little bit of everything. So I'm glad to be here, and hopefully we can provide some insights in life to whatever questions come up today.
Yeah, great. Well, I hope you all noticed each of the panelists, their organizations assist other companies with the implementation of technology in the workplace, which I think gives them an excellent vantage point on how this gets done or not done in the space. So I'm going to start off. I threw them a big question, which was, hey, look, technology in the workplace has exploded, but we haven't seen the worker productivity gains that we expected out of that. There's been a lot written about this. We've had gains, but nothing close to what was forecast. So what's going on? So, John, how about I have you start with that and we'll have everyone comment.
So to your point, we've had some productivity gains, mainly because of mobile phones. While you're waiting in line at Starbucks, you can do email, things like that. That has helped on the productivity side, but we've been distracted as well by a river of data, right? And emails. What I teach my consulting teams is read your email in batches. Don't treat it like I am. That's one way to be more productive in the workplace, right? You know, every couple hours check an email versus every 2 minutes or 5 minutes trying to respond. It helps you stay focused on a task, because that's what I've seen. There's a lot of distractions, right? You get a lot of alerts, cell phone, email, IMs constantly going off. So that's what I've noticed from being distracted in the workplace.
Jason?
Yeah, I agree with everything John said. And in addition, you know, we're moving more and more of our applications and infrastructure into the cloud, so that makes it a lot more versatile. You know, people can work remotely a lot more easier than they having to come into the office. But again, it is information overload. I think that now we have the impression that now we can multitask, do more things at once. And of course, that just means that every single micro task is going at a slower pace. You're not really improving your productivity. So yeah, I have to agree that there needs to be some way of filtering out the noise so that you really are having valid communication and filtering out unnecessary communication. And the same with tasks. You know, we've all been on that email where the Western Hemisphere has been carbon copied. And you know you don't need to be in on that, but now you're on the string. So if you stepped away to go to a meeting, you come back to your inbox and there's 65 emails with the same subject, and you don't even know where to start with this or whether it has anything to do with you. So yeah, I think it's a matter of being smart about how we use this technology to communicate, and being able to actually spend more time using this technology to do what it was intended to do to increase our productivity.
Brian, I'll let you take a crack. Let me, since you're third and but how's security impacted here? I mean, productivity, you have the tool, it can be used against you. Maybe you could comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, let me try to transition that topic. So I might challenge that productivity hasn't increased. It's not as black and white as, you know, the traditional measure of productivity is based on GDP, right? They have a standard number that they can go look at how much an employee works versus the output. It has been standard for a long time, but I would challenge that a little bit. That I wonder if the way that we're measuring productivity may be antiquated, and so that drop in productivity that we've seen may not exist as much as we think it does. But to your point, right, absolutely, distraction is also a contributor to, you know, to that equation, and because you're so easily able to get distracted, right, with technology. You have your phone, you've got this high-speed, high-resolution device. You can sit right beside your desk, right? You stream Netflix while you're doing your job. You know, there's a whole generation that watches Twitch. I don't even know what Twitch is, but I know the name now. That watches Twitch while they work, right? I have to associate that there's some level of distraction there. But them having these devices available now has broken down the traditional barriers of our network, right? There is no more wall, right? You know, as security consultants, if we're still focused on building the wall higher, we've completely missed the boat, right? They're digging around it, they're digging underneath it, they're flying over it. There is no more wall because of the distractions we've brought to the office now that that is bringing vulnerabilities in with them.
So you all have the advantage of seeing lots and lots of implementations of technology. Give us some, let's start with some success stories. I mean, what were the characteristics of the clients you had that implemented a technology and it just worked? How did they get that to happen?
What is an example of a technology that just implemented and it just worked?
It's not so much the example
Mhm.
of, I'm looking for what did the organization do to make that happen? What are the,
Yeah. That's an awesome question. So, what technology professionals will often overlook, right? They value the technology and the skill to implement the technology above everything else. And a lot of technology professionals will overlook, right, the change management and the project management and the cultural buy-in to implementing technology. And so I'm going to use an example. Like, when we first started deploying Office 365, our competition, like, they were doing it in a week. Great, you're slamming a new technology in place. It wasn't getting utilized. It wasn't getting adopted. So when we look at it, we said, well, it's a minimum of 8 weeks, right? It's a week of implementation, maybe a week of post support, but then another 8 weeks of like marketing and cultural buy-in and executive buy-in and branding the darn thing so people want to use it and are excited about using it. So the implementations that just work are the ones that focus on more than just the technology itself.
Yep.
Jason?
I would say you need to start with your outcomes. What are you trying to get to, and make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of where you're trying to get to. And all, the implementers and the customers agree completely on when we're done with this, what are the outcomes? What are we looking to get out of this? What are the limitations? And what is the productivity increase we're going to get out of this? And from there needs to be a solid, 80% whatever planning before you even begin the implementation. Proper project management, as Ryan said, is key to defining really a really good solid scope that says we're going to do these things and we're not going to do these things, or rather they're not included in that scope. You can certainly do them, but then it entails some change management, a change order, etc. So the customer's not surprised or frustrated that we've implemented this and now you're coming back to us to go back to the well for more money to put in this feature that we thought we were getting in the first place, right? I would say an example of this is from a security perspective. If you're greenfield and you're coming in and you want to get next generation firewall and you want to get web security and email security and endpoint security, the full gamut, identity services, etc. And you put in all of this thing and you're going to be rock solid and it's going to just take care of itself. It'll self-tune, it'll do everything all by itself. And that's all good and fine, but I always use this term, you can have a shed full of tools, but it won't build that deck by itself. You have to actually use those tools. And so couple that with a good company that can manage those tools, or a team, a SecOps team that actually is trained and proficient with using those tools. So in the end you can say, yeah, we see what's going on in our network. We have complete visibility of what's happening. I think we've done our due diligence to try to mitigate threats.
Great, John, to put a little twist on this, I used to work in venture capital and I served on a couple of boards. Whenever an ERP system is proposed, the entire board cringes and sometimes weeps, so how do you do that right? Why should an organization feel that terrified?
So, and part of some of those reasons, and it used to be Gartner would quote back before the millennium bug, right? That 80% of those implementations failed. It's probably 70% now. It's gotten better by 10%. But start with good project management. But from a security point of view, you want to start with security in mind. make that part of your kickoff for not only an ERP project, but really any project. Have security in mind as part of those goals and that project management. What's your audit and compliance? Because a lot of times I've seen projects get implemented, oh, segregation of duties. Oh, wait, that doesn't meet compliance. And then you've got a lot of rework to do, cost goes up, project could be considered a failure because you're more than 10% over budget, things like that happen. And the best projects, because you said, I've got some doozies that aren't the best, but the best projects start with security in mind, meeting that compliance, segregation of duties, not having in SAP terms, it's called SAP all, which means you have access to everything, limiting those authorizations, user profiles and rights.
Do you think implementing IoT is kind of flying in the face of that though, right? IoT is about first to market. It's about getting it in place now, and we'll add security later. I mean, is that hindering what you're just talking about?
Yeah, and then sometimes there are IoT devices, or you want to project certain status or reports from analytics on some of those IoT devices. You have to be careful there. I like to put them on, if you can, put them on a different network, segment that network. So SSID, Wi-Fi, common terms, system set ID if you want to know what the acronym is, and segment where you can those devices. And then you can actually monitor traffic and see if anything is transmitting back to China, because that was in our FBI kickoff thing this morning, right, our key speaker. And then you can see if any of those chips are actually transmitting data. It has been caught. You said Twitch earlier, and then I'll be quiet, but that's an Amazon video game streaming. There's also something called the Epic Store. It's like Steam if you have kids or you play video games. It's a distribution system. Well, Epic is owned by China. And there has been a lot of data brought out of that distribution tool. Oh God, what's the game that everyone's playing on there? Fortnite. Fortnite. But guess what? A lot of that data in your computer specs have all been downloaded without authorization early in that Epic tool. So.
Now, I'll kind of add to what John said also. Thanks for opening the door to kind of go to turn here. John's right on with planning with security in mind, but go broader than just the scope of your application as well. Sometimes an application is put in a new service, and the sort of the infrastructure security guys aren't even consulted by this, right? And then suddenly you have to go in and put in some other services, or maybe even different hardware to try to protect this application. And if that's not considered, again, that can be a considerable change in the budget planning for this application rollout.
So let's, what are some of the security nightmares you guys have come across? Everyone loves a good horror story. Yeah.
So,
Jason, I'll start with you this time.
DDoS are up and coming, and I think that more and more you'll find where particular K-12, I mean, they just seem to be a target nowadays for DDoS. And
What is DDoS?
oh, sure, distributed denial of service. So you can have a number of security products in place in-house. You can have your endpoint security, your web security, your email security, your access control, your segmentation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if somebody's overwhelming your pipe from the internet into your workplace, what do you do about that, right? I mean, a lot of times, even if you have a good firewall at the end there, at the edge, that firewall can get overloaded with requests. You just try to continuously do requests. All right, so let me answer your question about what's a DDoS. And I'll try not to go too deep but I will throw out some fun terms. So what they'll call like a bot herder, for example, will compromise a number of devices out in the wild and turn these guys into botnets. Together, they're called, this awesome term, botnet army, which sounds very apocalyptic. And they can use this botnet army to simultaneously attack a single target or a set of targets. And really, so they're just continuously doing requests. Let me open this page, or just sending up some data looking for a response, and opening these connections, and eventually the infrastructure gets overloaded by it, and they can't process anything. It's too slow, and so everything that's dependent on going through the internet comes to a halt, and try to figure out what's going on. a lot of times you have to come through and say, well, you know, in the past, you try to go to your ISP and say, hey, I'm your internet service provider. I'm being overloaded here by these targets. What can you do about it? And sometimes they had to scramble around, and ISPs used to kind of do that for free, and now I think they're getting wise and figuring out this is a monetizing opportunity, right, and charge you for such a thing. So then you gotta retro in something on the fly while they're having a problem, which is always tough, because then the victim has to come up to the board and say, I need to drop this much money, thousands of dollars, not only for remediation, but then for the solution to try to prevent this again. And so it's difficult when you're trying to work within budget constraints to put in something on the fly that you didn't plan for, instead of saying, okay, we realize this is a threat, right? And so we need to prepare for this to try to mitigate the risk of this happening, right? So that's where, so you bring in a good trusted partner to come and analyze your company and your security portfolio and understand where you're at and what your risks are, so that you can present this to your decision makers and say, these are your risks, and this is what it costs to mitigate those risks. And then you make the decision as to whether you accept this risk or you're going to pay money for it. Because then your IT infrastructure isn't going to take the heat for it. It's really kind of your decision makers that say, no, we understand that risk, and we decided to accept the risk.
All right, Ryan, we have bot armies. What do you have?
Well, I will give a brief horror story, and then I'll tell you why it's important. So, we do a lot of assessment work for to kick off a new client relationship. We'll come in, we'll evaluate what they have, and tell them if there's any gaps. And I remember this one specific assessment that we did where their IT professional, in order to pass their PCI compliance, right? PCI, anybody who runs credit card transactions, right? You have to be PCI compliant. In order to pass the test, their internet address, right, the number their provider gives them to use for internet access, he just shifted the number, right? So he provided the wrong number to the independent entity that does the scan. And lo and behold, they started passing, right? So they were failing, and now they start passing because they're not even scanning the right thing, right? And to me, like that, and this was a big conversation with the organization. Yes, we called him out for his shenanigans, right? That's unethical, don't do that. But the culture that organization had built pushed him to make that decision, right? It was control costs at all costs, right? Control costs at all costs. And so he was pushed to make really poor decisions for the organization because that culture said, we value cost control more than doing the right thing. And so back to the project management, change management. You gotta have organizational buy-in to security, right? You have to, and even further beyond that, the most successful companies, Katz-Apper Miller is our old parent company. We used to be a part of the Katz-Apper Miller group, and still have the same brand until sometime this year, right? But they actually monetized security risk with their people, right? So they have a tool called Noble4, which is it's an attempted phishing tool. It helps you practice finding, identifying phishing attempts in your email. And they found that they were really bad. They did a really bad job at identifying phishing attempts, and people were clicking. And so it was so bad that they said your bonus at the end of the year is tied to how well you perform security checks, right? How well you identify phishing attempts. If you are a consistent failure and you put the organization at risk, it contributes to your pay, right? That's building a culture of security, right? I mean, that's a little extreme, but you get the point, right? So.
It's been involved in financial institutions where you do that once and you're terminated. So.
That's right.
Yeah. John, how about you?
So, yeah, there's a couple of examples of some things that aren't good. So I've had I ran a data center as well in the past, but I've had a network manager, I actually got a client site working for me. He said, oh, yeah, your laptop's not gonna work. You're not gonna you can't plug in here. I just plugged my network cable, not hooked to their Active Directory domain, got an IP address, was able to attach to SAP. Showed them right on the spot. They changed their policies after that. That's just one. I've had clients that weren't aware that some of their sales team and marketing, no offense, thanks Stephanie and marketing, plugged in, they wanted Wi-Fi. So they brought in their own, plugged it into a RJ45 jack, and we're broadcasting outside their walls, outside the building. This was a Fortune 20 company, semiconductor manufacturer, that was broadcasting a lot of stuff that they weren't aware of. So we'll let them know that. And, they had to shut that down. So all the equipment that Jason talked about is great for those attacks, but internally you have to have good process and project management again to prevent, and that's really training, right? To prevent some of those things from happening, because you can spend $1 million in IDS and Cisco and preventing flood pings and things like that, and someone's just going to plug something in, or they're going to do reverse engineering. They'll start, and I've had this happen as well, so social reverse engineering. Call the receptionist, ask them questions, right? Oh, what's the executive? Oh, he's not there today. Oh, well, I'm with his vet. Oh, you mean his dog Harvey? Okay, they start finding out, okay, password, Harvey. What's their birthday? And they start, finding ways into your organization that aren't necessarily technological. Those are just some of the things I've experienced in the last 20 plus years.
I mean, it happens all the time.
Because I suspect we read about the big ones, right?
Yeah, I mean,
the ones in
you hear
the
about
paper.
the little ones through the local media and the big
Yeah.
ones through the big media, but it's a thing. I mean, people always say, if it hasn't happened, it will at some point, and that's kind of doom and gloom. But you need to be prepared, and what John said, a BCP is a great idea. Part of that BCP needs to be a disaster recovery plan as well. But it's very difficult to react if you don't have a plan in place. If in case of emergency, break glass, and put behind there, say, what do we do if there's a breach? We have a breach remediation plan. Plan one, we do, we work on recovery, or we turn the lights off, or we turn the whole power off and shut everything down, whatever your plan is. And then you need to get a hold of your remediation partner. Have a remediation partner lined up ahead of time, because when the sky is falling is not the time to look through the yellow pages or search through Google on your phone because your network's down to try to find people who do remediation. You want to vet those people out ahead of time, to find out who can help you in time of need. And then, of course, a backup and recovery plan. It's just a must. You're going to have your data on your live systems, a local backup on site, and then another backup off site somewhere that you can recover from. And also, just to kind of go back to the horror stories again, that ties into this. We've had customers call us and say, "Help! We're being breached. We need someone to help us with this." We set them up with a partner that comes in and tries to help out, and the first thing they're going to say is, "Where are your logs? Logging for everything. Where are your logs?" And the customer said, "What does that mean? I don't log anything." That leaves them completely powerless to be able to try to find, scope, contain, and remediate. The company to try to find out where you're at, where it started, and how to plug the holes and how to remediate. Right. So have that plan ahead of time. Make sure you turn on logging as much as you can somewhere offsite, so you can look at those logs while your system's having a problem, and then just go through a dry run. Go through a dry run to make sure. Let's pretend like this is happening. Let's go do a round table and say who's doing what in case of this. So you can calmly execute when the time does happen. Say it's okay. We know we do. We're just going to follow our procedure.
And it doesn't take a lot of effort to put a BCP together. It can be summarized just as long as you have something and you kind of know how you're going to handle it.
And review it annually. You're going to have to change it. What data you have contained is going to change. The threats you have are going to change year to year. It's lucrative. As soon as you monetize something, now it's monetized criminal activity. So just understand that, yes, it's out there. So have your business continuity plan in place. What do you do when this happens? Because people are in a situation now where once they get hit with ransomware, what do? Do we pay the criminals for the ransom? Well, I don't recommend you doing business with criminals. They're criminals. But sometimes what if you're a hospital, a healthcare organization, and you're trying to get your medical equipment back on board. You might have no choice but to do something with that, but understand that if bad guys got into your network to cause this ransom, to encrypt your system, then even though you restore the system, there's still a means to get in there, and now you just proved you're a paying customer. You know, here's your loyalty card, come back next time, you know, and we'll double the ransom, right? So you have to address it, they got in here somehow. So don't just pay the ransom, you gotta keep going for that. But I would say if you can at all avoid paying the ransom, don't incentivize them by paying them, it just motivates them to do it again.
Depending on your backup regimen, like I mentioned earlier, the 1, 2, 3 plan, wipe the server out,
Yeah.
restore, plug the holes.
Yeah, it's getting challenging. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's getting challenging because now you've got ransomware based on code that's delay based. So maybe there's a piece of code that infiltrates your systems and you're gonna sit there idle for 6 months.
Correct.
Well, you can't restore back 6 months and lose 6 months worth of data. So, you know, then what do? It's a challenge. It's an ever-evolving challenge. Yeah.
It was Baltimore, right, that said, we're not paying, we'll burn the city.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, this has been a great panel, guys. I really appreciate it. If we could all give them a round of applause.